we are still wrapping up E3 2019. I think this is going to be one of the last episodes where we talk about the events in their immediate vicinity from E3 2019. It was a good year with lots of big games to talk about, and we are going to talk about some of the best that we saw at E3, and I've got two wonderful guests to join me to do that. I've got Andrea Rene from What's Good Games, and I've also got Sam Machkovech from Ars Technica, and I think I got everybody's names right there. Pretty close?
You did.
Nice.
All right, fantastic. We're going to do this in an interesting way because I've asked Andrea and Sam to give me their lists of their top 10 games, and then we'll. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through our individual lists of top 10, and then we're going to sort of meet and talk about each of them. And I'm just going to rattle mine off real quick, and then we'll go to Andrea, okay? So my top 10 of E3 includes The Outer Worlds, the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Luigi's Mansion 3, hi Andrew, The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, hi Andrew, Doom Eternal, Borderlands 3, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, Andrew, Modern Warfare, Gears 5, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and I chose my 10 based on getting actual hands-on time because I saw some incredible demos. We'll talk about some of those demos, but Andrea, let's hear what your top 10 from E3 2019 would be.
Absolutely. So I included games that had demos behind closed doors but did not necessarily offer a hands-on experience because I wanted to make it a little bit more varied as far as to what we saw at E3 this year. So my top 10 list includes The Outer Worlds, Cyberpunk 2077, Borderlands 3, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Dying Light 2, Watch Dogs Legion, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Marvel's Avengers, Gears 5, and Creature in the Well.
Very cool. I don't even know anything about Creature in the Well, so I definitely want to talk a little bit about that. But first, let's hear from Sam and your top 10, my friend.
Yeah, we all have a lot of overlap. We all picked Final Fantasy VII Remake and The Outer Worlds.
Yep.
There's also some overlap on Doom Eternal, Luigi's Mansion 3, and Cyberpunk 2077.
Yep.
Where I differ on the rest of my list is Control, Bleeding Edge, Through the Darkest of Times, and the virtual reality combo of Lone Echo 2 and the Beat Saber 360-degree edition, which is a mouthful, but holy cow. I can't wait to start battling about that.
You've got two VR games in there, Sam, and I think that's phenomenal, and I definitely want to talk to you about those two. But let's go back to this Creature in the Well. Andrea, I don't know this game. I couldn't say, that's one of the problems with E3, let's be honest. Even when we're judges and we get time before the show to look at some titles before we even go to Los Angeles, there's still not enough time. We still can't see everything, and that's always been, the truth of E3, but let's hear what Creature in the Well is all about.
Sure. So Creature in the Well is a small indie title developed by a team called Flight School, which is essentially like just these two guys.
Wow.
And I got the opportunity to play it at the Independent Evening at Judges Week this year, but they've showed it at a couple of different opportunities throughout the year so far. And its release date is still just 2019, but I believe it's happening sooner than we anticipate. So the reason why this game stood out to me and why I'm picking it as one of my top 10 is because it really, to me, merged a couple different genres in a way I hadn't seen before. First off, as you can see, the art style of this game is absolutely beautiful. I love this kind of hand-drawn look, almost like a comic book style of art that we have. And you have this character who is a robot, and you play with essentially like a glorified stick where you're hitting this small white ball around the map. And eventually you start to build in more mechanics that are related to pinball machine mechanics. And so you have to use the bumpers that you find throughout the world to strategically hit the ball at enemies. And when you get to the boss fights in this game, it really ramps up in difficulty really spectacularly in a way that I found super challenging and also very intriguing. I just was really enamored with this game in a way that I was not anticipating.
I like the style of it a lot as well. And really, there's been a few games that have tried to merge pinball with other mechanics. And I would say this is right at the top of the list of that. So I'm really glad that this is on your list because it also just looks cool. It's just one of those you look at and go, oh, yeah, I want to play that again, which is hard to say when there's 7,000 games coming out per day.
Well, and it speaks volumes that this indie game stood out, in the crowd because, obviously E3 is about spending lots of money and big teams making big games. But let's talk about the VR titles that you picked. Lone Echo 2, that is, what's that team again?
That's Ready at Dawn. And
Yes.
they tried. There are people who love the first Lone Echo in terms of being a full narrative feature-length VR game. I disagree. I think it does some interesting things with movement, and I think that's more fun in their multiplayer modes. There's Echo Combat and Echo Arena, but Lone Echo 2 to me takes all the interesting ideas of the first one and says, oh right, you've got this bulky thing on your head. Your time and your patience is valuable. We're going to make sure you're always engaged either with a puzzle or interesting storytelling or interesting visuals or movement. And the little slice that we got to play was just going around this very haunted, isolated, abandoned space facility and figuring out what's going on.
Cool.
One touch I just thought was so amazing was you go up to touch the woman who's talking to you. You try to reach for her face just as a jerk, and she swats you away and recognizes you in this very clear way. And I'm just like, oh goodness, they really were thinking about what I might do in VR. From there, it just all falls into place. I think Oculus has really stunk at making good first-party feature-length solo games, and this to me is everything that I want in that kind of experience.
Well, I love that.
Actually,
I love that Oculus is investing so heavily in Ready at Dawn, though, and giving them a chance to kind of grow as a team in this space, which is really cool. Beat Saber is a phenomenon. I read a little bit about your piece about Beat Saber 360. That sounds intense, and it sounds like virtually unplayable, but clearly not.
So the first part about it, it's only for Oculus Quest, meaning only for the wireless system that they have.
Okay.
And the idea is, if you've played Beat Saber before, you would know that it's got these sort of patterns coming right at your face of notes that they swipe like Luke Skywalker with lightsabers to the beat. The idea is that these lanes come at you, but now from slightly different angles, to the point where you're actually turning 360 degrees over time. But each turn is very rigid. It's not subtle. And it starts out with, okay, oh, there's something to the right, oh, something to the left, just a little bit. But by the end of each of these songs, and these were Imagine Dragons songs, so therefore already kind of familiar, I was just swirling all around. I was laughing. It felt like I was dancing in a way that didn't make me dizzy or uncomfortable. I mean, VR is such a weird science. And I had not felt like I was in a virtual reality arcade the way I did just after 2 songs of this. It's in a total early alpha state. It's not going to be coming out for a while, but holy cow, it just did something to my brain that I cannot forget.
That sounds amazing. Sounds like the danger room or the holodeck right there. Andrea, let's talk a little bit about why Watch Dogs Legion is on your list. Why do you think that was an important game for people to check out?
I actually was surprised by how impressed I was with Watch Dogs Legion, and I don't say that because I was not impressed with how Ubisoft has developed this franchise in the past, but more so like, when you get a third installment in a series and you get some of the leaked information that we got ahead of E3, you go into it with skepticism. So I really was skeptical about what Watch Dogs was going to show, because that franchise, more than others in Ubisoft's slate, has had not a great history of showings at E3. But we don't need to go into that right now. So the reason why it impressed me so much was because being able to play as any NPC in the game sounds like a pie-in-the-sky thing that a developer writes on a whiteboard and is like, I have this really cool idea, guys. I think this is going to be awesome. But actually executing it is something that is way more difficult and really quite innovative when you think about it. And once we dove into exactly how the system is going to work, and we see my girl Helen right here, she's so good. What I love about it is that there's going to be 3 main classes of NPC characters, and then you can kind of mix and match these different types of NPCs to build out your legion in Watch Dogs as part of DedSec. And I never thought that I wanted that in a game, but I really do.
That's so rad. I was the only one, I just looked over our list, I think, that put Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order on there. And I got to tell you that I wasn't blown away by the demos that we saw, the not playing it, like the hands-off demos, the video stuff that I saw. I thought, okay, this looks a little generic with Star Wars stuff kind of fused on it. But when I got my hands on time with it, I felt like such a freaking badass with my lightsaber and my force powers, and even just in the arena. And the guy that I was demoing with is one of the guys that worked on the combat for God of War. And that kind of woke me up. It was like, oh my God, that's what this is going to feel. It's not just an Uncharted type of game or just a generic action-adventure game. You're going to feel incredibly powerful in your combat. And that's when it really clicked for me, is that this was a game, and I think that's why I directed my my picks in the direction of how these games made me feel when I played them. Because I felt fantastic playing Jedi Fallen Order.
I enjoyed my time with it as well, but I think about Jedi Knight 2, and I'm going
Sure.
back to that, and also I've got the mods on with that, like total decapitation, which they're not allowing in this one.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious about what the Metroidvania structure is going to be like and the other sort of God of War systems. What was interesting was Respawn talked to me, and they said that the team started building in 2014. Like, we never found out until last week that that's how early those God of War devs from God of War 3, I believe,
Yes.
were on this. So, like, they've been cooking this for a while. But also they talked about how their switch to Unreal Engine 4 really helped them hit the ground running once they started hiring in 2016, which I was like, oh, interesting. Someone from EA talking about an engine that makes it really quick to make something happen. Huh. It's hard to hear that without the context of all the other nightmares that have happened at EA. But that's, I think it's really cool. But when you talk to me about Control, I'll tell you why I picked that over Jedi Fallen Order, because that was what was right side by side for me.
I got you. And honestly, it wasn't coming to me right away, but once I started to get the groove, I was like, yes, I'm getting addicted to this. Let's talk about Marvel's Avengers, which I love the demo, but obviously we didn't get hands-on time, but it's also been a controversial title. But you've got it on your list, Andrea. Why is it one that we shouldn't ignore?
The reason I put it on my list is because I was actually very impressed with the Behind Closed Doors demo.
Me too.
Obviously, because of my work with Square Enix and hosting the Marvel Avengers showcase at the E3 Coliseum, I got to have a little bit more time than the average media person with the development team. So I got to ask them more questions and, really get to learn more about the development process of this game. And the reason why it really impressed me is because they have such a tall order coming on the heels of the end of the MCU with Endgame, and really the amazing amount of love that Marvel's fans have for everything that happened in the cinematic universe, for
Yes.
a studio like Crystal Dynamics, despite the fact that they have an incredible track record in video game development. I mean, like, the stakes are very high for them, and I thought it was really smart of them to go with an original story. Obviously, there's a little bit of a jarring moment happening when you first see these characters, because you're like, oh, Black Widow isn't Scarlett Johansson, right?
Yeah.
Like, Thor isn't Chris Hemsworth. So, like, that is going to take a little bit of time, I think, for people to get used to the visual representation of these well-known characters on screen. But
yeah, and honestly, that was the same thing with Spider-Man when Insomniac was showing off Marvel's Spider-Man, and he had the white spider, and I flipped out on that. I was like, that's not Spider-Man. That doesn't look like Spider-Man. I loved all of the action, but it was not the character. And then you forget all about that when you get the game. And the behind closed doors demo of Marvel's Avengers was amazing.
I just think the biggest thing, that the takeaway I got when talking to the team, was that they have games as a service in their mind, with the whole no microtransactions for specific content in terms of playable stuff. They've got a path. They've got a lot you want to, they want you to play a lot of it. I want to see that, because I haven't seen Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix do games as a service with anything
Right.
in the Tomb Raider or
Right.
Deus Ex line. So I want to see what support they have for that. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and that's why I didn't quite make my list.
Well, it does sound like they've got the right approach by letting you have a single-player core experience and then expanding it out at your leisure and if you want to. And I feel like a lot of I've said this a few times on the show, but I feel like Destiny and Anthem and other game, even the Division, could have benefited from an approach like that, where you could have a core single-player super fun time, and then if you wanted to expand out and have the games as service kind of experience, you could still do that. I don't know. I have a lot of faith in Crystal D. I think they're an amazing team.
I'm with you. I think that people are right to be skeptical because, we haven't seen something like this from Crystal Dynamics before. However, I think also it's maybe okay to reserve judging it or comparing it apples to apples to Spider-Man on PS4, which was a fantastic title from Insomniac. They're two different studios. The combat sections that I saw behind closed doors really have me excited to see more. And with Marvel overseeing the narrative, I think that we can trust that they're in good hands.
Let's talk about two other games that had sensational demos. One of them we know is Cyberpunk 2077, which was following up on their last year's just insane demo. But I think the Dying Light 2 demo was absolutely extraordinary this year. You've got that on your list. Do you have it on your list as well, Sam?
No, it didn't. I mean, there was a lot of stuff. I had to pick and choose, and that was one that I was like, in terms of ones I didn't put my hands on, Cyberpunk edged it out. So
yeah. So, Andrea, it's on your list, and in terms of demos, it would have been, I think it was the strongest singular demo that I saw. I sat in the front row of that demo, and I felt like I needed to have a shower after that. It was so intense, man. It was crazy.
I was incredibly impressed with what Techland showed with Dying Light 2, and that's from me who did not play very much of Dying Light. The zombies in the night cycle of that day and night cycle that they have in that game just were too intense for me, and so thankfully they didn't show any of that in this demo.
Yep.
But what I really was impressed with was the algorithm changes that they made with the parkour, the traversal system, and really how they approach that, not only from a visual perspective, but from a background technical perspective, to say, we want to really push the limits of what we've done as a studio and make this not just another parkour game, but really a traversal game unlike anything you've ever played or seen before, layered in with this narrative RPG as well. This isn't just an open world action combat game. This is a game with massive narrative consequences. You're going to have to make strategic choices that could dramatically affect the outcome of your game. Now, we've seen other games do this before, but I haven't quite seen them do it on this scale. Like, for example, in the demo that we saw, you can choose to either turn on these water pumps or leave them shut off for a strategic reason. And if you choose to turn them on, it empties out a whole section of the map that introduces a new infected enemy to fight and this whole new area to explore. And if you choose to not do that, that area just is closed off from your entire gameplay. And that's crazy that they would do something so bold as to say, hey, you know what, we're going to make you make hard choices that are going to actually have real consequences. And I really applaud them for doing that and trying something really different.
Me too, and I think that's the the Chris Avellone sort of influence in there, where they're sort of embedding consequential storytelling into the game. And they were very humble when I interviewed them about the fact that they really needed help in that area, and they took it willingly. And I think we're going to see something that's going to surprise the hell out of us. I think they made a ton of money on the first Dying Light, which I actually did love, but it was more about the gameplay. And now it's going to shift into something I think quite extraordinary. But let's drill down in that Chris Avellone connection, because one of the games that is on all of our lists, I believe, is The Outer Worlds, which I can safely say I think rocked E3 this year. It was a phenomenal game, yeah? Sam?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's
Sam,
my game of show.
Is it your game of show?
There. It's right up there with Final Fantasy for me. Just everything that you guys were saying about Dying Light 2, I think is going to shine through. For me, as a Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas fanboy, there's certain stuff the three of us are not allowed to talk about, which
Still?
is strange. Yeah.
What?
Here's what I will say. All three of us saw incredible stuff.
Yes.
We are, for some reason, not allowed to say, oh my God, this was so incredible, which is insane. But I will say that the way, the portion that we all saw set out some very serious stakes, but in this really subtle way where you could see multiple paths that branch the plot out in crazy ways. And you're like, oh, right, I can do anything in this game because I can just kill people or use dialogue stuff or use stealth stuff and go in these crazy paths. And the game, just in the little bit we saw, made really clear, yeah, we got your back. We have a ton of depth beneath that one little decision that you might make. And that, to me, is like the real skeleton that I want from a sci-fi follow-up to Fallout New Vegas. That familiar first-person, dialogue-heavy, good script, lots of weapons, lots of skill trees, all that sort of stuff that you want to live with. If you're going to play a game for 40, 50, 60 hours that makes you think of the best 3D Fallout, this is what I've wanted. This is what I wish Fallout 4 had been, just in the taste that we've gotten thus far.
It is amazing how much of a challenge it's going to be to Fallout, right? Andrea, why is it your game of show?
So I also got to see an additional behind closed doors demo at E3 in a meeting room that I can talk about. And what I came away from so impressed by was that they took this formula, which has clearly been done before, but they have really polished it up to this like nice shiny thing that is just exactly what you want in an action RPG.
Yep.
And it's not overdoing it. It feels so far like they've edited themselves very smartly to say, you know what, we want to put a lot of gameplay in here. We want to put a lot of different variety for players and really have it feel like they are role playing in this game. But we don't need to give you like a 500-hour experience in order to accomplish that. We can give you this like great concise story that's going to offer 50, 60 plus hours of gameplay, and we're going to do it with like the highest amount of polish possible. And on top of that, it's so funny. It's got that fantastic Obsidian humor in it. They really excel at making things really witty and whimsical and comical, and very few RPGs can really nail that. And this is a game that I didn't know I was going to be this excited for, but right now it's my most anticipated game of the fall right now.
It feels like Obsidian is really going to, like, capitalize on all that it's learned. That's what it really feels like for me. They've got the technology and they have 2K support and they're owned by Microsoft. So there's a lot of players in here that are going to help to make this really be a remarkable title, and I'm super excited for that too. Final Fantasy VII Remake ended up on all of our lists as well. Is that your game of show, Sam, or are you ready to kind of call your game of show?
Oh, I mean, it's right up there with The Outer Worlds. It is. We've all seen a bunch of stuff. The YouTube footage that they had out there for their showcase was pretty plentiful. On the show floor, a lot of people. I mean, that was where all the lines were. There were fewer people at E3 this year, but all of them were sucked into the vortex that was.
And what a demo it was, right? It was so fun.
But there's also, I love the phrase behind closed doors, makes us all sound really cool. But they did show a giant chunk of the dialogue that was not shown in the press conference or on the floor, which really sells the game as a truly high budget anime kind of production. I think that this has exactly the level of voice acting, dialogue, and cheese that you want from a truly there's a lot of love and care going into this. Like seeing Jesse have this sort of crush on Cloud and have that manifest in these both dialogue ways and other subtle facial cue ways was a thing that wouldn't have happened in the 90s version on PlayStation 1. And that's just one of all of these different things I noticed, all these little touches. But the other thing that blew me away was playing it, going hands-on, going, yeah, that's 30 frames a second, about 1080p resolution, and my TV was definitely connected to a PlayStation 4, not some sort of hidden beneath a development PC. They're cranking with Unreal Engine 4 on this. It's just the way the battling all works and looks and feels. It's very fluid, that mix of real-time action and menus. I've never really fallen for Final Fantasy 15 or Kingdom Hearts or some of these other action RPGs where you're joysticking your person around, but really it's just menus. Here I felt like they really did get that 50-50 split. This is not Devil May Cry.
That's a great point. Yeah.
It is something that really, to me, gets right at that halfway point and says, yeah, I'm a lapsed JRPG guy, but I want to try this. I'm super excited by what they have.
I think it's incredibly important. Andrea, what would you say is more important for Square Enix to get right, The Avengers or Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Well, absolutely Final Fantasy VII. I mean, I think that people are going into the Avengers already skeptical, but the fan hype for Final Fantasy VII Remake is off the charts.
Yeah.
If they swing and miss at Final Fantasy VII, it's going to be potentially catastrophic.
It'll be devastating, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they cannot swing and miss on that one.
Yeah, but I think they're going to. And what's interesting about what Sam was saying is that I come at it from a different perspective. I do not like traditional turn-based JRPGs at all. It's just not my forte.
Right.
Brittany on our team, like that is all her business all the time. And so that's why I was so surprised by how much I was gravitating towards this demo, is because it's really attractive to players like me who do prefer more of the Final Fantasy 15 style, who do prefer a Devil May Cry type of action game, to go, you know what, I might actually sit down and enjoy playing through this, because it really balances that tradition, that ode to the classic Final Fantasy VII combat from the turn-based angle that you know and love, but it brings in this really fresh perspective, and they do it well.
That's awesome. Guys, we could keep talking for hours here, but we don't have the time to be able to do that, unfortunately. I definitely would love to have you both back. But let's pick our favorite game of the show. You've said yours is The Outer Worlds. Andrea, that's fantastic. Sam,
Correct.
What would be yours if you have to pick one?
I mean, because I already gave a tie, I'm going to say the tied for first place is also Doom Eternal. Holy cow, that was fun to actually hold in my hands on PC and mouse at like 144 hertz monitor. Like,
Crazy.
That's just unreal. It just already feels like everything that I didn't realize was missing from Doom 2016 has been put into this sequel. It's great.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I had a guest from Nintendo, Andrew Collins, on earlier, and we raved about how awesome Nintendo's showing was there. My pick for favorite game of E3 is actually a tie. I'm cheaping out here a little bit, but Luigi's Mansion 3 and The Outer Worlds were, like, it's really hard for me to pick either one of those. They're both so freaking cool, and I can't wait for them. But we've got other big shooters like Gears 5 and Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Both look super exciting. It was a smaller E3, but it wasn't a bad E3, right? We've still got a lot of great games to look forward to.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
you just invited us for another episode so that E3 goes on until July. Goodness, man. Give us a break.
I will definitely invite you back. It was wonderful to have you. Weren't these guys great? Phenomenal. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you very much. Andrea, you can watch Andrea's stuff at What's Good Games. I think what'sgoodgames.com. Yes?
That's correct, yes.
Cool. And arstechnica.com is where you can read Sam's byline and all of the comments that he's got there. Love to have you guys back as soon as we can make that happen. You guys were phenomenal. Thank you.